I thought I'd do a little run through on how I transport and store my figures. I did a post on my blog last week or the week before, and just to sort of explaining how I've remounted my figures for transport. And I did look at various options of those carrying cases, the foam carrying cases that look quite expensive, and I saw loads of them up at Salute with the foam inserts you can put your figures in for safe transport. And some of the guys at the Wargames Club have got the Warhammer ones, which they keep all their figures in, and they look great, but they do look a lot more expensive than I was prepared to shell out. I'd rather spend the money on more figures, so I decided to find a system of magnets and keep them safe that way. So what I did was I'm using these 25mm washers, metal washers, which I get from Wilkinson's in the town, and they have, at least in my branch, a pick and mix for nuts and bolts and washers and screws and things. And just for a couple of quid you can fill a bag with whatever you want. So they do two sizes. This is the first size, the small size, and that's £1.99 for a bag. I've got 30mm washers in there at the moment, and you can just ram that bag full, and for £2 you can get about 160 25mm washers in there, which is really good value, considering when you look above the pick and mix display they've got the individual packs, and for £1.25 you can have a pack of 5 washers. So for just another sort of 70p you get an extra 140 washers. So that was the first one I bought, 160, just to try it out, and I've since been back and filled up 2 bags, and I can get just about 300 in a big bag for £2.99. Very good value. The only problem is when you go in and empty the washers, next time you go in they're empty for about another week or more, until somebody notices in the store and then fills it up again. And then I went in and the day after they filled it up and emptied it again. Anyway, they're at Wilkinson's. So what I do is I give them a quick spray of undercoat, mainly because when I stick them onto the bottom, I'm going to paint the edges brown, and with a layer of grey paint on there, it just gives that extra bit of key and undercoat for the washers, so that the brown paint goes on. I stuck those on with epoxy resin. I started off using the Gorilla one, which is about £3.99 or £4.99 for a pack. But then I discovered that the Pound Shop does epoxy resin for £1, and I've used that, and actually there is no difference. In fact, the second lot of Gorilla epoxy I bought took quite a while to harden for some reason. It's supposed to be hard in sort of 10 minutes, but for some reason, and I'm sure I mixed it up enough, but it wasn't hardening very quickly. This does the job for £1, so I bought a few of these at the Pound Shop. Perfectly adequate. I also bought some hard as nails. Was it hard as nails? No More Nails, sorry. And I have used that on some figures just to see if the fixing is good. So far it is. It's a lot easier than mixing up epoxy, but whichever method, just stick them onto the bottom there. The only little issue is when you put the washer on, where you put your epoxy on, put the washer on. Of course, when you turn it upside down and then go to dry, it can slightly sort of come ajar as you move the figure upside down or the right way up. So just got to be mindful of that, and just slide the figure while the glue is wet, so that you get a perfect match. There was some I did post about it on the Bolt Action Facebook page, and a few people were a bit sceptical that the washers were the same size as the bases that I was using, which is the standard 25mm base, the MDF bases from war bases and other places, and they suspected that the washers were 1 inch, which is about 0.4 of a centimetre, 0.4 of a millimetre bigger than 25mm. Anyway, these washers are exactly the same size as the standard bases. So once I've fixed them on, so that's one without, that's one with. It does make the figure slightly higher, but given that all the figures are going to be slightly higher, I don't think that matters. And by the time they're painted up, it's not quite so obvious that you've got an extra bit on the bottom. So then you need a way to, or something to fix or to stand your soldiers on, and I've got some magnetic sheet. So this is it. Comes in A4 packs, A4 size, and I got these from eBay, about 15 quid for 10 sheets. And once I've got those, I just cut them up with a scalpel into strips, 20mm strips. These are. The reason I cut them into strips is it maximises the use of the magnetic tape, because if you just lay it as a sheet on the bottom of the box, there's going to be a lot of space that you're not going to use. You know, this sort of strip in the middle of the figures, and I find by putting them into strips you can actually cover more box area. So these are the boxes I'm using. I do a lot of computer stuff, so I've always got motherboard boxes and that kind of component boxes, which are usually fairly sturdy. And this is what I do. Put the magnetic sheet, it's self-adhesive, so you just peel off the backing paper and stick them on in little strips and mount the figures. And the magnetic hold is sufficient that you can stick them upside down and they're not going to fall off. They're not going to move about. I mean, they're easy enough to lift on and off and move about, but in storage and transport they're not going to be bashing into each other and sliding all over the place, which is what they were doing up until now. So that's one example there. So this is my Russians. They're all painted up, and I've used these in a couple of games already. All I've done is I've put them into squads, well, not into squads, into type. So I've got all the rifles, all the machine guns, submachine guns, the NCOs, and then the specialists, so officers, medics, machine guns, light machine guns, spotters, and the like, snipers, anti-tank guns, and just to keep them separate from each other. And probably what I'll do is when I'm actually wargaming with them, I'll put them into a smaller box depending on the size of the army that I'm using, and transport them separately. So the only issue is with the bigger units. So in this one, let's remove that. So the oval sections, I've put 2 washers on. So that's then painted up brown, and then I've just put 2 strips specifically to carry those. And then my mortars, I've used an extra base, cut out section of 25 mils, then epoxied the washer into that and then stuck that onto the bottom of the mortar base. The only thing you've got to be wary of is the washer isn't as wide, isn't as thick as the base, so one end will be shy of the top, and you need to make sure that the side that is has got the sort of gap at the top is in the middle there, so that the washer is nice and near to the magnet. Otherwise, just a millimetre or two away from the edge of the base, and it won't stick properly onto the strip. Now they're fine, but the larger bases aren't going to stick. They're certainly not going to stick upside down. So I would probably, I've only done one magnet, one washer. I would probably do two next time with the next large bases, and do similar to the oval bases. Put two strips of magnetic sticky stuff and run them with one there and one there, and then I'm sure that'll be a lot better. But at the moment, I mean, they will, they will wander due to the weight of the actual base and unit. So, as I say, next time, bear in mind I'll use two washers and two strips of magnetic tape. These ones are fine. So that's how I've based up my units. And here we've got some Germans. Now these ones, I think there's just an issue with how level the washers are to the bottom of the base, so it might be worth considering putting two washers in there instead of one. Certainly with the mortar unit, which is a lot heavier. These are metal figures, whereas most of the others are plastic, so that is it's quite a substantial unit. So I wouldn't be putting those upside down, although they're probably fine for transporting and storage. So there we have it. That's how I've decided to do my bases, certainly for the time being, and unless I get lots and lots of spare cash to get a custom made carrier. Thanks for watching.